Let's apply the transformations we learned to graphing functions with multiple transformations. Now, before you get started with graphing transformations, one thing that I would like for you to always do is be sure to describe the transformations in words. And I want you to use the proper vocabulary that we've been using. Okay. Another thing I would like for you to do is be sure to give at least 3 points. Okay, and in terms of graphing transformations, I would adhere to your order of operations in figuring out which transformations to do first. I think that would be the easiest thing to do. So let's go ahead and begin. Let's take a look at this function here. G of x is equal to -2 absolute value of x plus 1 minus 3. If we were to follow the order of operations, then we would think, okay, -2 is what's going to come first, right? -2, you think of multiplying by things inside parentheses. All right, so we're going to work with the parentheses and the multiplication first. So in describing the transformations, the first thing we see is with the -2, that negative is telling us that we should reflect the graph across the x-axis. Another thing that it tells us to do is because there's a 2 there, we are going to vertically stretch the graph by a factor of 2. Okay, so that takes care of the -2. As we're doing this, let's go ahead and find some points that are actually being applied to this. So in terms of choosing 3 points, I'm going to go ahead and choose 0, 0. That's a nice easy point. I'll also choose, let's choose 1, 1, and let's choose -1, 1 as well. So I have 0, 0, 1, 1, and -1, 1. Okay, now as we apply the transformation, we said that what we want to do is reflect this across the x-axis. So 0, 0 will get mirrored over to 0, 0 still. 1, 1, if it reflects across the x-axis, will now go to 1, -1. And then -1, 1 will get reflected over to -1, -1. And then we want to vertically stretch the graph by a factor of 2. So each of these gets stretched by a factor of 2. Remember that idea of Play-Doh. We're going to stretch this. Now 0, 0, if we stretch it, still becomes 0, 0 because you're stretching it from the center point of 0 along the x-axis. But everything else gets stretched by a factor of 2. So 1, -1 will now go to 1, -2. And -1, -1 will now go to -1, -2. Okay, then we apply our next transformation, and these transformations can actually occur simultaneously. Really, the only transformation that we have left is going to be the +1 here and the -3 here, and we know that those are going to represent our shifts. Okay, so if they represent our shifts, then the +1 is telling us that we're going to shift to the left by 1, and we're also going to have to shift to the shift down by 3 because of that -3. So every point gets shifted left 1 and down 3. So each of these points that we have here now, 0, 0, 1, -2, and 1, -1, -2, now gets shifted 1 left and down 3. So let's take our first point here, which was at -1, -2, right? So we're going to have -1, -2 shift left 1 and then down 3. So 1, 2, 3, right? We're going to be down here. So we're going to be at the new point of -2, -5. Likewise, the point 0, 0 will go left 1 and then down 3. So 1, 2, 3. So we'll now be at the point -1, -3. And then, oops, sorry, that's this point here, -1, -3. There, okay. And then our next point, which was at 1, -2, now goes left 1, so we're at 0, and then we go down 1, 2, 3. So we'll be at -2, 0, -5. like that. Okay, so those are going to represent our 3 points. Our 3 points are -1, -3, 0, -5, and -2, -5. Those are the points that I want you to specify. It doesn't have to be those exact points. Obviously, you can choose any point along that absolute value graph, but that's the idea. So that when you graph this, if it's kind of hard to tell where your points are, at least I can identify what points are actually on the graph and make sure that those are the correct points. Okay. All right, let's do another one. We're not going to do all of them. That's for you to do either in class or on your own. But let's look at number 4. That's an interesting one. Okay, so we're going to graph f of x equals x to the third power. And then our transformation g of x is equal to negative x to the third power plus 2. So let's describe our transformation again. What are we dealing with here? Let's see here. So because inside the parentheses we had that negative x there, we know that our first transformation is going to be a reflection across the y-axis. Let's see what else we have here. We also have the plus 2, and that's going to tell us that we have a vertical shift up by 2. Okay, and that's basically it. Those are our only transformations. We know the parent function, x cubed, is a cubic graph, and we can see that on the graph. Again, choose 3 points. And the 3 points we'll choose, let's choose 0, 0. That's a nice one. Let's see what else we have. Let's do 1, 1. That's a nice, easy one. Okay, whoops, I'll do it over here. 1, 1. And then another point. Now, because you could technically choose, let's say, 2, 8, but I think that wouldn't make for a very good transformation graph, because when you graph it, you're going to be plotting just this part of the graph, but you want to part the entire curve so you get that S shape. Okay, so instead of choosing the point 2, 8, I'm going to choose the point -1, -1 as well. Okay, so those are the 3 points that we're going to modify here. So first thing we're going to do is reflect the graph across the y-axis. Well, 0, 0, if we reflect that across the y-axis, that basically stays put at 0, 0. If we reflect 1, 1 across the y-axis, that'll get put over here. That's going to be at -1, 1. And then if we reflect -1, -1 over, we're going to reflect that over to 1, -1. Okay? So we're basically reflecting everything. So in essence, what you'll have seen with transformation 1 is your graph would have looked something like this, right? But we know that's not the end result. Now what we need to do is apply the vertical shift up 2. Okay, so let's go ahead and apply the shift up 2. We're going to take each of these points, and if you're shifting everything up by 2, then basically what that means is you're adding 2 to all y values. Since it's shifting up, you're affecting the outputs. Okay, so if you're affecting all the outputs, you're affecting all the y values, you just add 2 to basically all the y values. So 0, 0 will go up 2 to 0, 2. -1, 1 will go to -1, 3. And 1, -1 will go to 1, 1. Okay, so if we plot those, think about how those plots have now moved. 0, 0 goes up to 0, 2. Okay, goes up by 2. -1, 1 goes up 2, so it's at -1, 3. And then the last point at 1, -1 will go up to 1, 1. Okay, so your graph will now look something like this. Okay, and again, it may be hard to draw that on the coordinate plane freehand, so that's why it's extra important that you label your at least three important points, so I know that you are definitely on the correct graph. Okay, so label those points, and then that'll signify that you are finished.